You're killing it.
Yeah.
Why are you putting yourself in that boat?
I'm just saying, that's part of authenticity, right? I'm going to say it. So just to get acclimated, to find like the right friends, to be accepted, right? I had to do a lot of navigation. And then that navigation, I guess, turned into passion, right?
Right.
For just appreciating different people, different culture, learning more about different people and different culture and what people do. Belonging happens when the right culture is set in the company. Belonging just doesn't happen, right, overnight or instantly. When a company or environment develops a culture or an environment where people feel safe and they feel okay to be who they are, not hide things, and they develop that pride that, I want to really shine my background and what I believe in and my thoughts and whatever else, and that I actually have a voice in this, in this environment with this culture. That's when belonging happens, right? I think communication is very important in conflict resolution. Crisis management, the first part of crisis management is disarming, right? So once you get that disarming phase done with, then the communication kicks in, right? Let's talk about this. Let's discuss, what's going on here. And then the compassion kicks in is when you're able to communicate to both parties that you can understand or see how they're feeling or what's going on. You can, you understand. And you have all those natural active listening skills that people are looking for that validation, right? When somebody, I think like a lot of conflicts happen when there's a lack of validation on either side.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Halak Show. This is a space where we decode people, the ones who lived, learned, and unlearned, and then chosen to help others do the same. Today's episode is special because it's about a word we all crave: belonging. We live in a world full of labels, expectations, and invisible pressures. And somewhere inside all that noise, we are trying to find ourselves, our voice, our purpose, our people. And today's guest? She's someone who has spent her life helping others be seen and feel seen. She's a thought leader who has shaped conversations around inclusion, identity, and leadership. She's an educator, a coach, a bridge builder, and truly a force of compassion. Please welcome Rubina Azizdin. Hi Rubina, welcome to my show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, we are very excited, especially the topic that we're going to talk about today. I want to know more about it, more than me trying to have any kind of assumptions or presumptions about the topic. So my tagline when we started the podcast was no assumptions and no presumptions. So we don't want to walk in with knowing something. We want to unlearn first and then try to understand from your perspective, and through your life and stories from your life that will probably change me as a person, change my audience a little bit, or they can at least have some thoughts about what we're going to talk about today, right? And I always like to start by, this one thing. Let's try to identify this person behind this title, right? Everybody has been given a title.
Right.
And would you like to talk about like your childhood or like the moment that shaped you in trying to get into your profession that you are in right now? How you look at people?
I knew that question was coming.
You knew it?
I knew
Dang it. I was so prepared to feel, you would not be. Okay, all right.
I knew that question was coming. So my childhood pretty much, it has shaped into who I've become. I was born and raised in central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Didn't have a lot of diversity. We didn't have a lot of Desi people. We didn't have a lot of Muslim people. We didn't have a lot of Hindu people.
Right.
So I guess like that sparked my interest in learning more about my culture and just meeting new people who were the same as my background. And then what was different about my background was that I wasn't your typical Desi. So the Muslim community that I grew up in, it was composed of a lot of people from Pakistan or from India.
Okay.
And so I was neither. My family is from Kenya, from East Africa, and we're Muslim, but we are Indian.
Right.
So it was always like trying to find that common ground with people. And like, for those people that know like desis from East Africa, they're totally different. Personality, interest, everything. They're just different in general. And so just to get acclimated, to find like the right friends, to be accepted, right? I had to do a lot of navigation. And then that navigation, I guess, turned into passion, right?
Right.
For just appreciating different people, different culture, learning more about different people and different culture and what people do, and then how I can like, be a part of people's worlds and things like that. So throughout my life and throughout my career, I was involved in cultural or diversity related or inclusion related work or projects or whatever you want to call it, right? I always gravitated towards that because I wanted to spread the word. I wanted to be part of a movement to grow that, in our community, in the workplaces and things like that. And then obviously, I think once you find your passion, you follow it, right? So that's what happened to me. I followed it and it just came natural. It wasn't even like I was looking to be in a diversity related role or, specifically what I am doing now. I guess like things just came like as I was navigating my career and my life and just meeting different people and looking at the needs of, what was going, I guess, well in the workforce and things like that.
Gotcha. Growing up, like as a part of the community that you grew up in, or the surroundings that you had, did they always celebrated differences or avoided talking about differences? What was your take on that?
I think it was a little bit of both. When I was growing up, the Desi community was growing. And so there was an interest of learning about one another, but then there was also a lot of segregation. Like you had to fit a certain category, right? If you were Muslim, you had to be from Pakistan to, I guess like prove that you knew what it was to be Muslim or understand the Pakistani culture and ways of, living and whatever else. And if you were Indian, you were considered Hindu. And so what's funny is before all of the community grew where I came from, people didn't even know that there was people from India or people from Pakistan or Asia or East Africa or anything like that. They just assumed Indians were considered Native Americans.
Right.
So like it's just like a sense of, I guess, like ignorance, not knowing enough or not wanting to know enough, you know? So
or assuming
assuming that you come first from a certain culture or background or ethnicity and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and any part of your childhood that still influences you to do the work growing up, the field that you are in right now.
Oh yeah, everything about my childhood, right? My parents always encouraged us to, be proud of our culture and our background and our religion and all of that stuff. And that's what I do in the workplace, right? I am an advocate for inclusion. I'm an advocate for equity, for diversity, to celebrate people's differences and be able to have people be proud of who they are and not have to hide it or have that mindset that, if I disclose something that's related to my background or my culture or my religion, I'm going to be punished for it or I'm going to be, segregated for it or something like that.
Right. I want to talk about something. So when you do something like what you are doing, right? Normally you are firstly an outsider trying to come in and be a bridge builder to have this conversation or have this understanding, right? Did you ever feel that you weren't considered or looked upon as an outsider when you were trying to be a bridge builder?
Oh, all the time. All the time. People were a little skeptical, especially if they didn't understand what the reason was or what was going on, So it's all about communication and your intent when you're doing things, right? So I think that if you're coming from a good heart and if you are able to communicate and elaborate on like what you're doing and why you're doing it and the importance of it, it kind of diffuses all of that.
Right. Normally when people try to, see if there's some conflict going on or, talking about, and somebody third person tries to interfere, not everybody looks at that person as I feel like it triggers biasness or some in their minds. One person will feel that even when you are not biased, right, you are still trying to just solve the problem. But how did you ever get into such situations?
So we all have our unconscious bias, right? We already have our mindsets about different people, groups, situations, right? We're wired that way. We're biologically wired that way. Me, particularly in a situation, honestly, I haven't had that situation. I haven't had a tough situation where I had to explain or defend a certain group. So luckily, like, that was a good thing. I've been a big advocate for women in the workforce, and there's a lot of support for that.
Right.
But you can't get the support. I think, like I said, communication and what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's like you have to show the data, you have to show the facts. You need to have real life, I would say, real life examples and cases in front of people to be able to showcase and to bring forth to prove, why you're doing what you're doing and why you're advocating for who you're advocating for,
Right.
and where the need is or where the gap is for what you're trying to do.
Gotcha. Okay, so on the topic of conflict resolution, right? When do you recall any of the most challenging conflict resolution you would have been through a lot of them? Does any particular one come to your mind?
I think one of the things that I encountered was people, with diversity and inclusion. That also involves religion, right? So religion can become a really touchy topic, especially in the workplace. So I think that was like one of my hurdles to teach about why it's important for us to know about each other's religions, right? We're not trying to convert each other or convert people into certain religions. I always had to answer, what are we doing? Why are we talking about Diwali? Why are we talking about Ramadan? Why are we talking about just different religions, why are we discussing this now? Why is it relevant to the workplace, right? What does it matter to retention or recruitment? Well, it matters because we need to understand our differences and how it impacts us in the workplace, right? We're not there to convert somebody. We're there to educate the differences, because that way you can be a better manager. That way you can be a better colleague or a friend, right? You can be more sensitive to people's situations. So prime example, in one of my workplaces, we hosted a Ramadan dinner, and we brought in a speaker from a local mosque to talk about Ramadan and the significance behind it. And we had around, I think it was like around 150 people. And so I didn't get any hesitation before, but then after I got, the feedback, like people were saying, yeah, I was kind of hesitant to come to this because I didn't understand why an imam was going to be speaking. We're not used to talking about religion. And then we found out that he wasn't there to speak about religion. He was there to speak about what people are going through during the month of Ramadan. They're fasting. They have to have time for prayer, right? So we need to be more mindful about things like having meetings with food and food truck, parties and stuff like that people have sometimes, or have long meetings when somebody's fasting, or having them conduct a long meeting. Like those small things, right, can affect a person's performance and even like energy when it comes to work. And so just being mindful of that and respecting each other and everybody's backgrounds and their religious practices, So they learned a lot about that type of stuff, because some people don't realize that, there's different culture, different religions and different people with different cultural backgrounds that practice fasting. And so it was interesting for people to learn that the timing of the fast, what was permitted during fasting, what type of food they could or could not eat, how long they couldn't eat, that kind of stuff. And they really weren't aware of that.
Right. Do you ever feel the pressure of fitting in and trying to sometimes lose yourself? There are situations where people would feel because of this, let me, like the example that you gave, that Maulana was supposed to come and talk. I wasn't sure if I should come or not, right? It's very much, what if that person would have not come because there's a pressure of fitting in?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Oh my God. I think everybody goes through that. I think everybody goes through, especially when it's a new situation. And it depends on like the diversity, I guess, ratio, wherever you're going, right? If you're going somewhere where people don't look like you or talk like you or whatever it is, right? That isn't really like in comparison with you, you're going to feel that pressure of trying to fit in. And so, yeah, I had some situations where I wasn't sure if I was going to fit in, especially from moving from industry to industry, right? I started out in nonprofit.
Right.
And then I moved into academia, and now I work in corporate. I also have my own business. And so I guess, like, yeah, everybody has that feeling of that you're not going to fit in because maybe I'm not a big enough expert. I don't have enough experience, or maybe I'm too young, or,
Right.
things like those types of hesitations. So yeah, there was a lot of times where I was insecure about, how well I was going to adjust and acclimate and build that rapport with people and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And also, like I said, like where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of diversity, so it was harder for me as a woman of color, a person of color, trying to compete with those around me who had the privilege and who had the connections and who already had the advantage, right? I'm a first generation college student. My parents came here from Kenya. Neither of them had experience with the American college system or education system or anything like that. And so everything, that I went through, whether it was college or whether if it was in the workforce, it was the first time for everything, right? I didn't have those mentors growing up. We were those lock key kids, like your parents aren't home, they leave a key and they're like, let yourself in, take care of yourself. And my parents had 2 jobs. My dad had garage business during the day, and then at night, my parents had a cleaning business. So that meant that during the day, my parents were like, busy with the garage and stuff like that. In the evening, they would go cleaning. So that meant that in the evening was my shift to take care of
Right.
myself and my brother and sisters. So that's what I was busy with, right? I was busy trying to figure it out on my own.
Right.
Because by the time my parents would get back, we'd be in bed sleeping. And that's
Right.
how we grew up all throughout elementary, high school, even college years. And so I really got to navigate, on my own.
Right.
It was either that I figured it out because, who else would I go to, right?
Right.
So it was interesting. And whenever I was trying to figure things out, it was always about fitting in, making sure that I'm doing the right thing. I want to achieve this education. I want to achieve, I want to be successful. I want to do this, and me being the oldest out of all of my siblings, that was also pressure. And I think that comes from also cultural
Yes.
cultural pressure too. Like
The
when
eldest one always has
yeah.
to take the
So
front.
growing up, I had a lot of pressure, right?
Right.
And I didn't feel like I was like the smartest student either. It's not like I was a straight A student or anything like that. I was an average student. So that put even more pressure on me because then my parents were comparing me to like their other Desi friends' kids who were like scoring like 1500s on SATs, and I was
Hindi we have this Sharma ji ka ladka, Gupta ji. That's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I was the worst in math. I was the worst in science. I was not your typical Desi kid, So like all of my life, it was like trying to figure it out, trying to fit in, trying to make sure that I was making the right moves, trying to make like figuring out how am I going to be successful? What do I do? How do I do this?
Right.
And so yeah, it was quite interesting. It was
So,
interesting.
so we had Tejal in our last episode, right? Probably very powerful conversation that we had, in that her Insta bio had ABCD written on it, right? American Boss Cycle Breaking Desi, right? Do you feel you're talking about more women empowerment here, right? Do you feel like women are more from the Asian community are more vocal about this, and they talk about like breaking cycles or whatever has been, or how do you look at this?
No, unfortunately, they're not. As much as women empowerment and support that there is out there, it's very hard to break through, I think, cultural norms to get people out of their comfort zone, to stand up for themselves, to break out of that cycle, right? Because a lot of their priorities weren't set on getting an education and then moving into the career world or workforce world and moving forward. A lot of people are just focused on maybe getting through college and then just getting a job and living their life and, raising their families and stuff like that. And that's fine too, right? That doesn't mean anything, but it just means that it's hard for Desi women to really speak up and speak their truth because they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to give people the wrong idea. They don't want to offend their parents and their culture and their background. So yeah, it's difficult to break through to that community of women. So, and I don't think that's just for Desi women. I think that's for a lot of a lot of different women. It just depends on people's priorities.
Right.
And I think it could just also be barriers that people have faced, right?
Right.
Some people didn't have the opportunity to get a good education. And even if they did get a good education, like for my personal experience, my education isn't where I got where I was. It was figuring out to find mentors, to follow people, to see, to define what success meant for me, to figure out what my passion was in work and those types of things. So some people, they don't have the means, they don't have the time, or maybe they just don't care, right? They just don't think that that's important. And what's important is survival for them.
Okay. A little bit of a topic. This is my mind, and it's in my mind, and I want to understand this a little bit more, right? There are educated people in the world who are supremely educated. They don't look at inclusion, they don't look at diversity the same way. They only care about their KPIs, their performance, their way of winning, right? They don't necessarily ignore, but they just don't think about this, or maybe they choose to ignore it, right? Who knows? What are we missing here between the two aspects of one looking at this particular topic and trying to talk about it, and the other was let's just move on, let's just get to work.
I think, like I said, passion and importance and relevance, right? So you have a lot of big successful companies that don't really care about diversity, don't really care about inclusion. They just want to get the work done, meet their goals, and make their revenue and move on with the day, right? And then there's companies that actually care, and the ones that care actually care about their employees, and they see how it affects retention. They see how it impacts culture in the organization. So it's just about what kind of mindset the leadership in the company has or is practicing, and priorities, right?
Right.
So like that's just the truth. Like some people care, some companies care, and some don't. And it's not just about caring. It's also about community. You have to see what community you exist in, right? And a company can't just be successful without supporting its community. So the companies that do care about their communities, care about their employees, they are advocates for social impact. They are advocates for making sure that their KPIs and their goals are connected to inclusion and to diversity, and to people really feeling like they can show up to work and be themselves,
Right.
and contribute.
Gotcha. Just for me to kind of understand, right, and also put out from your perspective, since you are a little bit ahead in this, in studying about this, it makes a lot of difference from where you come from, right? All right, let's go to the next segment. Let's talk about growth. I'll tell you I'll start with a fun take, right? I always take my podcast as an example for particular this topic, and this is so relevant to talk to you.
Okay.
More. It's about like growth, right? And I believe growth is always messy. Like you can never have like a steady, cleanest growth, because, and if you do have it, I think it's boring. I mean, you should have messy growth. I mean, growing up, right? It's part of journey. The way where we were when we started like 10 months ago and where we are right now, it's all the teachings and mistakes and the messy part that were there that led us to this particular position. And I still always feel that I'm never perfect. It's always messy, and you stay messy.
Right.
That reminds my favorite footballer is Messi. But
My bird's name's Messi.
oh, there you go.
I have
So
a
much.
cockatoo.
No, so is there any messy chapter from your life that that it taught you something so precious that you always keep it with you?
Let me go back to my high school years.
Okay.
And I'm going to be really vulnerable right now, because this is what this show is about, right? We're talking about
Stories.
things that people are uncomfortable with. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be uncomfortable.
Yes, we
And
should.
I'm going to talk about it, because why not, right?
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
learn. So like I said, like I wasn't like your straight A, strong math and science student growing up.
This was high school?
high school. Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah. And so I was already accepted. So my parents had convinced me that I was going to be a pharmacist.
Okay.
And no in hell's way would I have ever become a pharmacist if I look at that today, because no, I get bored so easily. So I did everything the right way, right? I became a pharmacy tech. I got accepted into pharmacy school. That's where Nirali and I met, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, so I got accepted into pharmacy school. I had everything, I had everything planned out. Everything was great. Everything was going awesome. And I think one of the biggest things that taught me a lesson was that I failed. I was in advanced British literature in high school. And that was one of the core classes that you needed to be able to graduate. So imagine first
This is
kid-
undergrad.
this is high school.
High school, okay,
High
high school.
school,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank God I was never here.
Yeah.
My high school was in India.
No,
Her
high-
pressures were completely different.
Yeah. This was at high school. Okay. So I don't know what compelled me to take this British lit class, and I took it and I failed it. And guess what? I couldn't walk at my high school graduation. I could not graduate with my class.
Wow.
Have everything lined up, my college acceptance, my graduation party ready to go, everything that you would think that a senior in college has planned out. And so when I didn't walk at my high school graduation with the rest of my class that I was with for the last 13 years, pretty much from kindergarten until my senior year,
Right.
that was a big, I guess, lesson for me that if I want something, it doesn't matter how well you're doing, or if anybody wants something, it doesn't matter how well you are, how great you are, how smart you are. There's always going to be a risk that something's going to go wrong that you don't plan for.
Right.
And I guess like that disappointment pushed me to never feel like that ever again. And it pushed me to really pursue whatever I wanted in a very, I would say, passionate and disciplined way, right?
Right.
Like if I wanted to get something, I knew that I had to have discipline, I needed goals, I needed a plan, and I needed a plan B too. So, I mean, I did graduate. I had to take that class, that one class, right, that let me down, and that's something that I'll never get back again, not being able to walk with my high school graduation. It was like the biggest disappointment because I was the first kid in the family to walk. So
Right.
my parents were so excited for my senior year,
Right.
and I didn't get to participate. And it was just so heartbreaking. I remember walking in, my dad was in his garage,
Right.
and I was standing behind the door for like 10 minutes. Like, how am I going to break the news to him?
Right.
Because like I said, everything was lined up, right? I was accepted into college. They had my graduation party planned, all
Right.
this stuff. And yeah, so when I had that talk with him, just realizing that, wow, this was a real disappointment, and got over it, right?
Right.
My parents were still supportive. They were like, listen, whatever, you can't walk, at least you're graduating,
Right.
like, you're never going to see these people again. It doesn't matter, right? The main thing is, like, we just want you to get into college and finish school. Like, that's what we want you to do, right? So thank God I had some positive things to lean on, but like that type of like, I think situation where it's a life event and it goes south,
Right.
teaches you a lesson that, number one, that it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Number two, have a plan to move forward and keep pushing yourself forward.
Right.
So I kind of took those lessons throughout my life and just kept on pushing forward no matter what it was.
Right. That's really deep what you're saying, right? A lot of time failures, they are going to happen no matter what. So instead of, trying to, but again, like I do understand, I do feel your pain of not being able to walk. But
Yeah.
I mean, if I talk about myself, I'm surprised you could walk in high school. I didn't even have that.
Yeah.
And the good thing is you can walk 3 times, then high school, undergrad, and then do your master's and you walk
Right.
again.
Right,
We
right.
didn't have that liberty.
But then, yeah.
I was so naive when I came here for sorry, you finish your thought first.
No, talking about the walking, my mom reminded me when it was COVID, guess what? Nobody walked.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So there is some bright light in hindsight
Yeah.
that you could, but COVID were like bad times for everybody, right? But yeah, I always, my heart goes out to them, people who graduated during COVID, because they missed out a lot of stuff, because walking for, it's a pride. You did something that not everybody was fortunate enough, or people who are still trying to figure that out, and you're walking now to pick up your degree. And it's a bit, I like how things are celebrated here. It's a lot of things I like.
Yeah.
But I still miss my school and my graduation. What we had fun. We had like a nice party and stuff, but we never had to walk. Like,
Okay, that makes me feel
personally,
better.
we never had to walk. Trust me. Again, see, a lot of good things. If we had to walk, if it's based upon your percentage that you get, so we don't get GPH, we get percentage, right?
Yeah.
Out of 100. I mean, I would have been somewhere like in the middle or towards the bottom side. I didn't want to walk then. My dad was the most chilled guy.
Yeah.
But my mom had expectations from me.
Yeah.
So that would scare me the lot, the most. And I was like, but yeah, I'm glad. And Nirali, I call her Nirali Ben.
Yeah.
So she was the first guest on this podcast, right? Ever.
Yeah.
And she left me with some really, really good, inspiring stuff. Like, she taught me empathy. So my first question to her was, how do I not judge people? And how do I not do that?
Yeah.
And then, so that brings me to our topic right now. But again,
Yeah.
what do people get wrong when they think about identity the most?
Oh my God. I think everything, right? Like I said, we have our unconscious biases already formed. So just associating people with different education levels, careers, who they, associate with, those types of things, even mental health, right?
Right.
If somebody has a mental health issue or concern, they're judged for that. Everything about people are judging everything about everybody all the time. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how educated, or how, rich or how poor or whatever background it is. People have assumptions, right? You just can't get away from it. And so I think how to deal with that is you do the best that you can do, right? If you're passionate about something, you stand up for that passion. If you're being accused of something, you bring that to light and turning into a teaching moment to whoever, whatever that is. You can't stop people and their brains. Like this is like normal human occurrence, right? You can't stop people from thinking, talking, gossiping. Like in the Desi world, the aunties, right?
Right.
It's like when you get married, when you're having kids, when you have kids, when you're having another one, and then, okay, then it's like the topic of the kids. Oh, okay, who's in what sport? Who's going to, what
Right.
kid, where's your kid going to college? Blah, blah, blah. Like you can't if you can't keep up with all of that. You have to find your own calling, your own passion, your own interest in your own life,
Right.
and follow that and live by that, and find people who align with that.
Right.
Find the right people you want to align with too. It's like there's all this noise out in the world, and if you get sucked into it, you're not going to be able to get out of it. So you have to find a way to really align with the people and the passion and the work that aligns with you and your identity. And if people have assumptions about that, let it be. Right?
Right.
Let it be. And that's all that you can do. You can't go out there and you can't fight the whole world.
Gotcha. So I started off by saying Nirali Ben's example of empathy, right? So how do you keep empathy alive when you're trying to resolve a clash or trying to show the other person, be empathetic towards the other person? Because not everybody is the same. Then there is a lot of thoughts, assumptions, egos, everything comes into play here, right?
So I think if you're going to empathize, it has to be from the heart. You can't have this phony empathy or else it won't be empathy, right? So you have to come from a good place. You need to be able to understand different perspectives, different people, and have that open mindset. If you don't have that open mindset, if you don't have that open mentality, then you're not going to be able to empathize, right? You're not going to be able to feel what somebody else is feeling. So just getting that understanding, developing that mindset of, I really want to understand where this person's coming from, what they're going through, breaking the stereotypes, breaking down the barriers of just stigma and assumption and inappropriate conclusions and things like that. You know what I mean? And,
Right.
And like I said, have an open mind and appreciate it. Have a natural appreciation for people and what they're going through.
Right.
And you'll be able to empathize.
Gotcha. And on the topic of empathy, right? Let's talk about like think about inclusion, right? Tell me one thing that people misunderstand when it comes to inclusion.
One thing about inclusion, I would say that inclusion gives people a space to be racist. I think that's a big thing. Bring out, right? And this is like what's going on in the world, in our political world. There's like this whole argument that inclusion is bringing more racism than inclusion. And that's not true. Because I was explaining this to my sister, right? She said, because my sister's a COO for a big company. And she said, well, now because of inclusion, I have to hire people to meet a quota or to make sure that there's diversity in the company. And that's not fair. And I said, well, that's not the point, right? It's not about race or it's not about background. It's not about quotas. It's about fairness. And it's also about thinking about the history of all these different groups that didn't have an opportunity compared to those groups that had more privilege. So that's the misconception that people have, is that, oh, now because there's inclusion there, it's giving different groups to bring that into the workplace and have more segregation and, promote segregation than what it was before. But really, it's about understanding the history of where people came from. It's understanding privilege. It's giving opportunities to those who didn't have them before and providing a space for different mindsets, because inclusion just isn't about race or gender or ethnicity and background. It's also about educational background. It's a diversity of thought. It's the diversity of human beings, like who you are as a person, right? It's diversity of life experiences. And when you bring all of these pieces together, it creates innovation, because you start having conversations. You have different mindsets. You have different experiences coming to the table versus just that traditional one set mindset that people are used to. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with something different because it makes them uncomfortable, because they may not be as knowledgeable about a certain group or situation.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I kind of understand the point more now, because a lot of times, inclusion can also, like, if you don't understand what you're talking about when it comes to inclusion, you'll always like start on the wrong foot, like how you said, like, when a sister was asking me this question and you were trying to explain to her about what the deeper inclusion meaning means,
Yeah.
and a lot of times there's people in the position to act upon inclusion. It's very important for them to understand as well, right? What does inclusion does not mean that you just bring in. It still has to have some merit backed by that point of inclusion, right? Who you're
Exactly.
trying to solve the problem, you should not just be filling up the seats for the sake of filling it up.
Exactly.
You need to bring merit based inclusion into this play,
Right.
or else you will again not be able to run a big company, or not be able to be successful in what you are trying to solve.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, like next topic. So, how do you look at belonging? Does belonging come with giving your permission, or giving yourself the permission? How does belonging come?
Belonging happens when the right culture is set in the company. Belonging just doesn't happen, right, overnight or instantly. When a company or environment develops a culture or an environment where people feel safe and they feel okay to be who they are and not hide things, and they develop that pride that, I want to really shine my background and what I believe in and my thoughts and whatever else, and that I actually have a voice in this, in this environment with this culture. That's when belonging happens, right? The people develop a sense of belonging, that we can belong here. We are part of this culture, environment, company, and we're accepted, right? It's going to be accepted. We're going to have a voice, and people are going to listen to us. We're not just going to be, it's not just going to be brushed off, and it's going to be valued.
So, Rubina, outside of your professional world, like when you're home, like what kind of a person are you? Are you more reactive or responsive?
Reactive.
Okay. All right, great. That's your human side, No, I'm like that too. I'm learning to really, just walk away and stay calm. I think I've come a long way. And this podcast has helped me a lot, because every time I talk to people like you, and I learn, and it's like an ongoing practice over and over again. I
It's
still
hard.
I still lose it sometimes with kids, or with and I end up like reacting in a way I didn't want to react. I do again go back and talk about it, and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
But when you try to have like conflict resolution being done, how can you be compassionate in that situation when you're trying to resolve a conflict?
I think that if I'm having a conflict with somebody, or
No, if you are trying to resolve somebody else's conflict, right?
if I'm resolving somebody else's conflict.
Because with you, if you are having conflict, automatically empathy kicks in. Then there is no chance for you to, and there is no need for you to be even compassionate, because now you're looking at it from the other person's angle.
Right.
When you're trying to resolve two people's conflict,
Right. Right.
how can you keep compassion at the center?
I think that if you're trying to resolve a conflict, the best way to be compassionate is to have a neutral view, right? You're not going to take sides. You're going to decide, how is this going to diffuse, and how can we figure out both sides? I think communication is very important in conflict resolution. Crisis management, the first part of crisis management is disarming, right? So once you get that disarming phase done with, then the communication kicks in, right? Let's talk about this. Let's discuss, what's going on here. And then the compassion kicks in is when you're able to communicate to both parties that you can understand or see how they're feeling or what's going on. You can, you understand, and you have all those natural active listening skills that people are looking for that validation, right? When somebody, I think like a lot of conflicts happen when there's a lack of validation on either side. So just being able to disarm, show that you understand how each party feels, and getting to be able to, I guess, tell the story of what's going on, and then coming up with solutions to how to resolve things, right?
Right.
Is how I would go about doing conflict resolution. And then the compassion part would come is once I would, give my reflection to the situation and then get agreements from each party. Like, it's so natural, right? So when you're angry about something and you don't want somebody's advice, right? You don't want to hear if you're right or if you're wrong or whatever. Sometimes you just need somebody to tell you, I can understand how you're angry right now.
Right.
I can see how you're upset, right? And that's all you need.
Right.
And I think like that's a big part of compassion, is when you are able just to disarm somebody by telling them and showing them that you understand how and what they're feeling.
Have you ever had a situation where you just want to walk away? It's like, this is God's turn now to fix this.
Yeah, a lot of times, not just with work, but like with personal issues, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes there's issues that come up with life, with people, with situations, and you don't really have control over. And sometimes people don't want to listen, right? They don't want to listen. They don't want to entertain what you have to talk about. They don't want your advice. So, there's certain things that you'll try as a human being to help somebody or a situation. And if it's not working, it's not working, then you have to walk away, right? You can't force any situation to go your way, or you be the savior or Mother Teresa of any situation.
So wait, are you telling me I can never resolve my kids' conflicts?
No, that's not going to happen.
That's what I was looking for.
Nope, I have
They
3.
fight all the time.
I have 3. And trust me, when 2 of the 3 are in a conflict, I'll tell them, you all just need to go to your rooms. I don't have time to listen to your story or anybody's story. Like, we joke about it. I have the judge, jury, and the witness living in my house with the 3 kids. So yeah, like just normal things like that, right? Like sometimes there's no resolution. Sometimes it's better just to either you move on with your day or just segregate that situation and let it figure itself out.
Yeah. Sometimes there's no point. Like we bring 2 things for 2 boys and we give them that exact same thing, right? But then the elder one or the younger one will be like, no, I want that particular one that they call him, my younger one calls him Bhai, right? Bhai has it. And I'm like, it's the same exact thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes even Shivani yells from kitchen, like, why are you not helping? I'm like, it's a lost cause.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just better just to not interfere. Let them, because we are not at a point where we can go and tell them, go in your rooms.
Yeah.
Because we can't do that, very, very young.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think they're bonding. It's what I tell her now. It's my new word.
Yeah.
I think they're bonding. Even when she sees they're fighting, I'm like, what do you want me to do? You want me to fight with them?
Exactly. Just let them figure it out.
I'm not going to win this, no matter what. So sometimes, it does to you, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember any moments you are yourself a leader, right? You're in a leadership role, right? That cracked you, or a moment that humbled you. Do you recall any such moments? And also to add to that question, would you have any tip for an upcoming leader or a leader already on how can they be looking at the leadership?
Yeah. Never assume that you are the smartest person in the room. Never assume that you are what's the word that I'm looking for? Not the professional, but what's the word? Not the specialist. What is the word I'm looking for? The
subject matter expert?
The expert. That's the
expert.
Word.
Okay.
Never think that you are the only expert in the room, right? Because like I said, there's a lot of leaders that are very educated, very experienced, but not everybody has life experience, right? And in my word of inclusion, I think that's a big thing. I think that having life experience is very important when you're working with inclusion and diversity. You can't speak to things, you can't speak to situations, you can't help people if you haven't lived in that situation, right? You can't like this work that I do, it's really from the heart. It's understanding. It's like what you said, it's about compassion. It's about empathy. So I think that I'm trying to think of one of my situations. Yeah, I was hosting a women's leadership conference one year. This is when I had first started my diversity work. And so I had an amazing lineup of speakers, very talented and educated and well-seasoned professionals that could be speakers for this event. And it was an event for our students. And there was maybe one woman of color on that panel of speakers that we had, or that lineup of speakers. And it was brought to my attention that your lineup of speakers are not as diverse as it should be, right? There should be more people from different religious backgrounds or cultural backgrounds or racial backgrounds or whatever. And at that time I was like, no, like I'm doing this event, and it's in partnership with a group of women who are from a Palestinian background. I said, I'm Indian, the event organizer,
Right.
I said, why do we have to to me, that was like tokenism. I didn't think that was right. But then I said, then it was explained to me that, no, listen, if you're doing a women's leadership program, what is the core of it? It's diversity, right? And so even if you have one speaker that's a person of color, even if you're a person of color, even if your partners are, like, the event itself should represent diversity.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's do that, right?
Right.
And then ever since that situation, I realized that, I need to think in a broader mindset, right? And that wasn't just because of who was selected to be there as speakers, but then who were those speakers? What groups were they attracting, right? So we didn't have a Latino speaker, but we had a lot of Latino students. So I didn't realize that, oh my God, like if we had a Latino speaker, these Latino students would be attracted to come and feel inspired and, compelled to be a part of this event.
Right.
So it goes very far when it comes to inclusion, and realizing how deep diversity is. It isn't just this surface level stuff. It's
Right.
connected in many different means. So I guess that was like my learning factor. I think that was a big lesson. Got to think beyond the scope of things. You have to, and also like when you're planning things, if you have an idea, a lot of people say keep your ideas quiet, keep your plans quiet. Don't tell people the world about what you're doing until you make it big. Let them see it and then hear the noise, and don't make noise until you have accomplished something. I don't believe in that. I think that you should be able to speak to people and to socialize things and to get ideas and perspective. And there might be something, like I said, don't ever assume that you're the expert in the world, right? Or in the
Right.
situation, because there's going to be somebody that brings perspective to you that you didn't even think about.
Right.
So that doesn't mean you go publicizing everything, but, talk to people, get perspective, get advice, no matter how young or how old or how, experienced somebody is or unexperienced somebody is, they'll give you some perspective, like our grandmas.
Right.
Back in the day, what careers did they have, right?
Right.
But everything came from wisdom. It came from life experience, right?
Right.
And were they wrong with the things that they were saying and doing? No, they weren't. They gave very good life experience, which has helped like in different areas of life,
Right.
no matter what it was. So wisdom and experience goes a long way.
I agree.
When it comes to
I
situations.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future? Like every generation has a different way and of looking at themselves, and then the way after, right? Where do you see like Gen Zs or the next generation after that? Where do you see they will think about when it comes to like interview? They are more strategic, right?
Yeah.
They're more calculated. They're more. I feel like they are much more. I feel their mental ability to comprehend something is much more evolved.
Yeah.
Even though we feel looking from this side is that you are doing this, doing that, right?
Yeah.
How do you see they will be shaping up for their future leadership?
I think they're going to be well prepared, because I think they're smarter than what I was when I was, in high school or in college. Like the generations just keep getting more and more smarter. Like my 11-year-old knows more about stuff than I do,
Right.
trends, whatever. They have a lot more resources than we did. They have a lot more exposure to, what's going on in the world than what we did. And that makes you smarter. That prepares you more. And they just have a lot more access too. Now, how will they handle it? I think that also, on the other hand, a lot of them are not used to, I would say, hard work. Because like my generation, right, we we're acclimated to, we were taught to work hard. We were taught to, do the best that we could do and all these things and go things the traditional way, right? Now there's so many options, right, for the new generation to have access to things. There's education programs that are condensed that they can do. There's remote options for working. There's remote options for education. There's so many different options that they have that makes it easier for them.
Right.
That sometimes they think everything's going to be easy in life, and they don't have that. They might not have that mindset of working hard. They're going to expect things to come very easy to them.
Right.
And that's going to be, that's not, I don't think that's going to change. I don't think anything's going to come easy to anybody. But going back to like our generation, right, working hard, doing things the traditional way, growing up, having expectations from our parents and, A, B, and C and all these privileges and things like that. Whatever we didn't have, now I think that our generation, meaning mine, like we want to give our kids everything that we didn't have, right? So they don't feel how we felt, so they don't feel left behind. They don't feel excluded. They're able to fit in. We're talking about fitting in,
Right.
So all these things, like we want them to have this life where they're comfortable and they have everything. And like my sisters ask me all the time, like, why do you need an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old to have cell phones?
Right.
We didn't get cell phones until I think when we graduated college, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I'm like, no, they need their cell phones because that's what kids do. They keep in touch, with Snapchat or whatever else. They're like, my son does his homework on his phone. You know what I mean? Like, there's no one else way that my dad would have let me do my homework. And plus, remember that time when they used to charge 75 cents a minute?
Yeah. Yes.
So
a lot of different times.
Yeah. So again, like access, right?
Yeah.
Making things life easier. So I think that's, for them, it's going to be a hurdle to figure things out when life isn't easier. Things don't come their way that's easy.
Right. But they talk a lot about mental health and all that as well, right? They talk about, I did like an episode where I'm doing like short, very, 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 very topical topics that I pick. And one of the topics was about Gen Zs. And our research led us to find that, they are much more aware in these kind of things. So even though when they will feel the pressure, they still have therapy sessions going on for themselves. So they have somebody who they're talking to.
Right.
But again, just something that, I'm always very interested in about Gen Zs and the future generation.
Yeah.
Because I like to be curious in knowing my kids will be in that same pool, right? So it's always better to be prepared.
Yeah.
What I'm getting into.
Right.
It's a world of chaos right now.
Right.
So what's one value that you will never compromise on?
One value, I would say being honest and authentic. I think authenticity goes a long way, right? Like you were talking about earlier about fitting in and, all these things. I think that when you're an authentic person, right? And I said with diversity, you need to be able to do things from your heart. You need to be able to understand where people are from. And if you are an imposter yourself, then you're not going to be able to really have that fulfillment or sense of fulfillment, right? Because you don't even know who you are yourself. So being authentic and not being afraid to show it, right?
Right.
And I think authenticity also builds trust too.
Right.
When people are real, when they're, they feel more humanized. And we have to understand that that's important because that's hard. That's hard to get from a lot of people, right? And it could be because of their position. It could be because of whatever situation they are in their personal life or whatever it is, right? Like the first time you meet somebody, you kind of put on like this, like you're different when you meet somebody at first. And then when you meet them like the 10th time, you're a different version. You know what I mean?
Right.
So why can't you be that same version, every time? Why can't you show up being authentic every time? So
Right.
I think that authenticity and being honest and not having like that imposter mentality, right? And kind of encouraging people to be authentic too.
Right. So do you agree that there are different types of people, right? They have different types of personalities. Not everybody will choose to be authentic. They will put up a different face when they are in a professional world. They'll put up a different face when they are with their friends. They'll even put a different face when they are by themselves, right? You should be authentic. I absolutely agree with you. And you should be true to who you are. How do you look at this from different angles? Like there's different types of people in the world.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be authentic.
Right.
Can you recommend another trait that somebody can also, try to understand this a little bit better?
I would even say confident, right? I
Okay.
think the two play together.
Right.
Like if you're confident about who you are and everything about you, then you're also going to be authentic too. You're not going to have that need to put up a show or do something or impress somebody or do whatever to fit in or whatever. So I think self-confidence is a big issue. And that impacts you in a lot of areas of your life, right? People are always questioning if they're a good parent. They're questioning if they're a good spouse. They're questioning if they're a good child. We're always questioning our self-confidence and things like that. If they're going to be able to, take on a project at work, or if they're going to be able to get through a podcast like me. So, things like that. Like you need that self-confidence, like show up, believe in yourself.
And you're killing it
Yeah.
by putting yourself in that boat.
I'm just saying that's part of authenticity, right? I'm gonna say it.
We are talking
yeah.
about something really, really relevant, hard hitting. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I always sell this too, that humor helps you sell something a lot faster
It does.
and a lot more efficiently. If
Yeah.
you are just serious, two people talking about this thing in that much way, we have to also appreciate the things that we do. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
are humans.
Yeah.
Humans are funny. They make I can tell you the kind of topics I talk about when I talk about this inclusion and stuff
Yeah.
with my friends at work. I sometimes feel, like, why did I think about this now? I could have responded this in that situation. So yeah, okay. In this world of chaos, professional, personal, right? You deal with a lot of hard stuff, right? How do you protect your peace?
I shut out what's unimportant to me. When I relaxing or doing whatever I need to, that's what I focus on.
Is there like a switch that you
Yeah.
you to ignore something?
Yeah, I've just learned to do that, right? Like in my especially in my professional world, I'm pulled in so many different directions, doing different things. Like I need to do that. If I don't shut it off, it'll never shut off. There's going to be so many different things happening at all times. And I work for a global company. That means I never get to shut off. I'm working on never getting
Why does it take me 5 days to find that switch all the time?
I'm working for a Japanese company, right? So I'm
Right.
working on Japan time
Okay.
during a lot of my work. And if I don't shut down, right, then I mean Japan's always going. They're
Right,
13
right.
hours ahead. So for me to shut down just means that I need to find my focus, right? So if I'm going to be spending the weekend with my kids, if I'm going to be folding my laundry, then that's what I'm going to be doing. I don't have time for other stuff.
Right.
But it's hard. It's not something easy because you have your priorities, you know what I mean? And sometimes there are certain things that like you can't like not focus on, you know what I mean? But like you just have to make things a priority. You have to think about yourself. You have to think about what makes you easy, what makes you productive, and what weighs you down too. You know what I mean? So
I'm a Virgo, trust me. We take time. We had to
Yeah.
If you had that switch to click on and off, we have the switch.
yeah, yeah,
It takes us a lot longer to,
yeah,
come to terms and
Yeah.
like lose that control and let go.
yeah, yep. I agree.
Because not every battle is for you to fight and win, like just focus on the war.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Lose some to gain the big picture.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that comes with like age, and it comes with like knowledge that you get accumulate. And it's also very important, I personally feel, for you to be put into those situations, because situations always teach you, right? And if you're never going to allow your kid to fall, the kid will not have that sensation. The kid will not know, oh, I fell down, this is what is going to hurt me, what will I do, right? So every single time now I do that. Like I said, right, my kids are fight.
Right.
You guys will figure it out that it's the end of the day, the same things. And Instagram doesn't help either, because Instagram says if your siblings or kids fight at the younger age, they become like really, really tight when they grow up. So like I'll find every single avenue to believe that theory now.
Right.
Sometimes I might just give them 2 toys here.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about this
Right.
now?
Yeah. You
Because
just
more you
convince
fight,
yourself.
you'll be so tight when you guys go.
Yeah.
I have a weird broken humor sometimes, but
I love it.
You got to keep things lively, right? What's a piece of advice that you once believed, but now you think it's completely wrong or it's not relevant?
Putting yourself second, everybody else first especially when it comes to family and kids.
Right.
So I've learned to be selfish to, attain whatever goal that I had in mind, or to be able to accomplish things or do things or live life my way. So like I said, I was married at a very young age. I was married at 22 in an arranged marriage. And then after that, it was everything about my family, about my husband, about the kids. So we got married, and then 3 years later, we had our first kid. And I wasn't able to really explore any careers and things like that because, we had to think about childcare. And then I
Right.
wanted to move on to get my master's. And then that was questioned because, how are you going to spend time with your kids and then also be able to do your education and also work? And but I managed it. I did it. Even if that meant that I'm not going to go to family events, or I'm not going to be a part of certain things, or I'm not going to, put my kids to bed every single night, whatever it
Right.
was, right?
Right.
I had to stand my ground. So I think that mindset, especially from women, from the Desi background, it's a lot about family. It's a lot about culture. It's a lot about lives, putting everybody first and themselves second. I don't believe in that. We were taught that way. I lived that way for a really long time. And I had to find, what made me happy and figure
Right.
out how can I pursue that, right? How can I move forward with a goal or a journey or whatever it was and fulfill my own personal, I would say my own personal situation or aspirations.
Right. No, very well put. I have last two questions for you, right? What does strength mean to you now versus, let's say, 10, 20 years ago?
Strength. I think that being able to deal with life situations. Sometimes we meet people, we have situations where we don't have the courage to really speak up when you're insulted or when you're confronted by something or those types of situations, right? Like dealing with toxic situations. So I
Right.
think like strength with me would be able to, instead of being so reactive, would be to take a step back, to think about, a more, I guess, like calm response. I
Right.
mean, you asked me earlier if I was reactive at home. And yeah, to my kids and
You
my home
always live like
situation.
two lives, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, like, whether it's in professional lives or whatever, just being able to think things through, right, before reacting, understanding the consequences that if you react a certain way, that this is what it's going to bring, this is what's going to happen, and understanding outcomes of a situation more clearly, having a more clear vision or problem solving, I guess, pathway to things. I think
Right.
that's a strength.
That's awesome. I also feel like, being vulnerable sometimes it's okay.
Yeah.
You should be vulnerable. That's also a sign of strength, especially when you are at home or with somebody you should be vulnerable, because then all the emotions that you are hiding in, instead of affecting your body or something in a wrong way, you let it out.
Oh, yeah.
And I see that as strength now
Right.
way more than what I used to be like 10, 15, 20 years ago, right?
Right.
I
right.
feel vulnerability is my new strength.
Right.
Especially with my wife or with my mom or with my sister. I want to be that.
Right.
Just, yeah.
And then I think another thing, right? Like sometimes I feel like, all our lives we've been taught that, you need to trust your spouse or your wife or, your family or whatever. Another thing that I have learned through life is you don't have to tell everybody everything about yourself, right? There are certain things that you keep to yourself that you can probably figure out and it'll be a much better outcome than, stressing somebody else out about it or having them form a judgment. And, you can say whatever, like, yeah, that's my wife, that's my husband, that's my kid. They're not going to think anything differently or whatever. But I think that sometimes keeping some things to yourself, dealing with your demons and dealing with your issues and working it out and making those decisions for yourself is important too.
Right.
Because no one's going to be the decision maker of whatever you're doing unless it's yourself. There's going to be people that influence things, but like some things are just meant to be kept to yourself. And I've learned that.
Right.
I've learned that.
Right. And my last thing, right? What would you say to somebody listening to this right now, right? Who is feeling unseen or unheard?
So if you're feeling unseen or unheard, maybe you might want to think about who do you want to be seen or heard in front of, or who, why are you feeling that way, right? Is it because is it because of you doing that, or is it because of other people shutting you out? Figure out the cause of it, and then find people who you trust and find people that you can talk to. And it doesn't have to be like, there's so many, like you said, like the new generation, we have all this access to mental health and all these resources now. So there's a lot of different outlets that people can turn to, whether if it's online or whether it's via phone or whatever, right?
Right.
They can talk to people. Now, being unseen, depends on what context.
I mean, some people would like just to be themselves and not be seen much.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like if somebody who feels like they're not being seen. There are people who feel that, but they kind of hide it in the background. That I want to be seen, I want to do something. Let me give you a fun take on this, okay? When I was young, and in our school there used to be extempore. Extempore is basically they give you a chit. There's a topic on it, any topic.
Yeah.
You get like a minute or a minute and a half, 2 minutes to think about it, and then you have to speak on the topic for a minute. Well, I don't remember exact time frame. There used to be some really good like kids. And then this used to be happen at like grade level. So everybody can participate, like 100, 200 kids, right?
Yeah.
And I used to always sit there in the audience. I never had the guts, but I always used to feel like, I want to do this. I can do this. But I always felt like I feel I can be seen here and in doing this. Like I have that art, but I always felt, bad.
Yeah.
Why did I not, or why didn't nobody ask, or, why did people like just assume, you cannot speak? But
Okay.
I feel I could speak.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that situation, I think like it's important to know why you want to be seen, why you want to be in that situation, why do you want to be in that, in a part of that group or whatever it is. What is your goal, right?
Right.
Is it just for validation that you're a part of the group because that's like the most popular thing to do? Or is it because it's a passion of yours and you want to pursue it? Is it because you want to spread awareness about something? What is it? Like what's causing you to be seen? Why do you want to be a part of affiliated with something?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like think about your intentions about it. And like I said before, it goes back to authenticity, it goes back to intentions, and it goes back to being real. So being real with yourself, right? So based on those, I guess like self-awareness questions, like why do I want to do this, right? Is it gonna be as being seen as, let's say like on Instagram, I want 1 million followers for what? Why?
Right.
Why? Because I want people to watch me and I like that. That's exciting for me.
Right.
Or I want to put out some bullshit and I want people to believe it.
Right.
Or I want to really like be an advocate for this or that or the other. I really want to help people, like find out like what it is that you want to be seen for and then figure it out from there. Right.
Awesome. Yeah. And the final thing, do you have any famous quote or any famous dialogue from a movie or something that, always, when we associate Rubina with?
I do, and I can't think of it right now.
I don't know why we do this. We don't give, but this is what it is, right? We never, in full disclosure, I never give you, we have to have raw conversations because we are.
I got it.
See?
You can never be overeducated or overdressed.
Wow. You can
Yeah.
never be overeducated or overdressed.
That's my favorite one.
I love it. I know somebody right now, instantly when you said overdressed, who is going to, that person knows. And we talked about, that was one of my guests.
Yeah.
Now, always remember the most well-dressed person who I know. Sometimes, over the top, but he's like, yeah, I'd rather have that versus, walking into somewhere where
Exactly.
I'm no, fantastic. How did we do?
I loved it.
You enjoyed it?
I loved it. Yep.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a very heavy hitting topic, and I was like, how am I going to conduct this? But I think you made it very easy.
You did an awesome job. What do you mean?
No, I think also it goes two ways, right? I mean, you were guiding me throughout because I wanted to talk a lot about some uncomfortable areas where we tapped into today.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the audience, you guys also enjoyed. And thank you again, Rubina, for finally coming to the show and, showing us your side of the story. And it's always about, my podcast is about a lot of curiosity and learning, keeping an open mind and just giving a platform to, listen and, talk, bring in people who are very different from one another. So we are very, very happy to have you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you. It was an honor to me. I was so excited.
Absolutely. And for the audience, please like, share, and subscribe this video. Again, be real. Don't lose yourself in the process. Be it anything. Try to be authentic you. And as we learn from Rubina, and then a lot of some good insights into, inclusivity, diversity, what are misconceptions, what are real stuff, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. This is your host, Halak. You just watched this episode of Halak Show. And this is your host signing off. See you guys in the next episode.